Well, good afternoon, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well. And man, we are just now, about a week or so outside of the Passover, the Days of Unleavened Bread in 2025. We had a nice little place that we met over there, that hall. I didn't know how many of y'all got to go over there and see that. I know some people were not with us, and glad that some of you are back. John and Donna, Maria, Christy, our two turkeys from. Oh, y'all went to Turkey. Oh, okay, that's what it is. I misheard that. Okay, you went to Turkey. Okay, you're not two turkeys. All right. So the Passover and the Days of Unleavened Bread of 2025 are now behind us. So how are you doing so far? Some of you may be going through some trials. Some of you may be going through some tests. Some of you have maybe even made some mistakes. And if you have, I'm going to say, good. You're on the right track. Do we understand the value of recognizing and learning from our mistakes? Sometimes those mistakes, of course, can cloud our vision and bring us down, give us a sense of hopelessness. But in our walk, mistakes can serve as stepping stones that lead us to a deeper understanding of ourselves and our relationship with God. Learning from our missteps requires reflection, humility, and a willingness to grow. We're going to talk about those things today. And we all have imperfections. That's just part of the human condition. There's no way around that. We are not perfect, but our mistakes are actually part of our growth process. Each stumble we make can serve as a powerful teacher, molding us into stronger individuals who learn to rely on God's guidance. So the title for today's message is, Never Let a Good Crisis Go to Waste. Now, Winston Churchill famously used this phrase following World War II as he was working to form the United Nations in an effort to end international conflicts. There's other people that have also used that phrase, some more recently even here in the States, but that may be one of the better, more the well-known phrases that he used during that time. But today we are talking about personal problems, personal crises or crises of various kinds. And these traits that we talked about, humility, self-reflection, and these are all part of what we can try to hold within us, try to focus on as we move through the problems in our lives, whether they're self-inflicted or whether they're coming from the outside. Because we all deal with adversity, we all deal with trials, we all deal with mistakes, and we all deal with problems. So let's start with humility. Now, if Christ is our perfect example, then I wonder, this is my opinion, if you could say that the Apostle Paul is our imperfect example. And what I mean by that is that he had a lot of problems. And he had problems of various kinds. He had hardships. He was constantly ridiculed. He suffered many things. And he had infirmities. And he didn't mind talking about it to the extent that it would help others. In one of his letters, he spoke of doing things he didn't want to do and not doing things that he wanted to do. But we're going to read a section from 2 Corinthians 12, where in the first several verses, Paul says that he was given all these wonderful revelations from God. This is in 2 Corinthians 12. There was a lot that he says was revealed to him. Things that he said that were awesome. Things that couldn't be expressed in words and that humans couldn't even talk about. And he was even tempted to boast about it, meaning to express some kind of pride in what he saw and what was revealed to him. But he had a problem. So let's pick it up in the middle of verse 7 in 2 Corinthians 12, reading out of the New Living Translation today. So to keep me from becoming proud, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger from Satan to torment me and keep me from becoming proud. Of course, we don't know what this thorn in the flesh was. Many have speculated. A thorn in the flesh seems to signify a persistent problem, a problem that won't go away. It could have been physical, or it could have been a mental problem. But it was, in fact, a weakness of some kind. What we do know is that it kept him from being proud, because he says so. It was humbling to him. In verse 8, he says, 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away, this thorn in his flesh. And in verse 9, he says, each time he said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now, Paul says, I am glad to boast about my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ can work through me. Verse 10, that's why I take pleasure in my weaknesses and in the insults, in the hardships and the persecutions and the troubles that I suffer for Christ. For when I am weak, then I am strong. A profound statement here from Paul. In this verse, Paul is expressing a spiritual truth. Our weaknesses can lead to strength. And often in our lives, we strive for success. We strive for self-sufficiency. We want to appear strong. We want to appear capable and in control. But to some degree, that can give us a false sense of perfection. Our weaknesses keep us in check. They keep us humble. And Paul is illustrating here the value of keeping the appearance of humility as a trait that defines who you are as a disciple and a student of Christ. So our weaknesses in this context are our strengths through Jesus Christ. Another thing to consider is self-reflection. Self-reflection, you can still see yourself in a broken mirror. And that's what we're talking about today, looking into a broken mirror, a problem that you're dealing with, either self-inflicted or a test or a trial of some kind. Self-reflection is the ability to identify and evaluate one's emotional and behavioral processes, to understand who you are and why you do what you do. And I'm here to tell you from experience, this has been a lifelong journey for me to find out who I am and why I do what I do. Because the answer is not always on the surface. It's not just there for you to see. It takes a little bit of digging down. And no, I haven't spent a lot of time on the couch. That's not what I'm saying. You know, I didn't go to an endless therapist and they all figured out what was wrong with me. I was baptized some years ago, and it was through the Holy Spirit that I was able to find out more about myself. But it was also going through all kinds of different hardships, nothing near what Paul went through. He seemed to go through a mecca of problems. But we've all had situations where we've made mistakes, where we've dealt with tests and trials. You know, you might even went on your knees sometimes and said, you know, God, why are you doing this? You know, why are you doing this to me? And, you know, you have to wait, you have to be patient, you have to let it play out, because then a lot of times in the end, almost every time in the end, you say, now I get it. Now I get it. So self-reflection involves evaluating your thoughts, your emotions, your behaviors, to gain a deeper understanding of yourself. And as we reflect, we recognize patterns and behaviors that lead to our missteps, and this awareness helps us to make better choices. Reflection is looking in the mirror at yourself, looking closely at yourself. So do you think Paul maybe had some time of reflection about this thorn in the flesh? I think he did. It says back in verse 8, that he begged God on 3 different occasions to take it away. He was definitely thinking about it. It was definitely top of mind for him. Another thing to consider, very important, is eagerness for growth. Eager for growth. That is essential, because you will not continue to avoid these mistakes if you're not eager to move on and to grow. So do you welcome these teachable moments? The book of James tells us to rejoice in the trials. We in the church a lot of time have scratched our heads over that one. You know, really rejoice? That's a little bit over the top, don't you think? But all of the different various kinds of trials you go through, fixes all different parts of your life, sometimes all at the same time. All of these dynamics working at different times in different places. Our spiritual growth comes in many different forms because there is a work being done. Sometimes behind the scenes, and unfortunately sometimes in full view of everybody, which is embarrassing at times. But, it happens. So are you beating yourself up over your weaknesses? In Isaiah 41:10, it says, "Don't be afraid, for I am with you. Don't be discouraged, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you, and I will hold you up with my victorious hand." So our eventual strength comes from God in our weaknesses. We don't even fully comprehend sometimes what we're capable of. With God's help, we can do all things, as it says in Philippians 4:13, "I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength." Obviously, that doesn't mean you want to do everything, but the things that are important, the things that are good for your spiritual growth, no matter what that looks like, you can do everything. I used to be terrified of public speaking, and the 2 presentations I gave in college, I nearly passed out. And I think it was for that reason that the teachers gave me an A, because they felt so bad for me. They said, "This poor guy, let's give him an A." I mean, this is, after all, art school. So, everybody got an A. No, it's not that. It's not that. It's not that. You had to earn the A. But now, now I can tolerate it. I can tolerate being up here and doing public speaking. And it's funny because public speaking, they say, is the number 1 fear of people? Yes. Number 2 is death, which is amazing to me. That beats death, people being afraid of public speaking. But it wasn't until Bill Wilson come up to me one day, and when we first come down here, he said, "Hey, would you do a closing prayer?" And I said, "Yeah." I didn't want to say no, and he walked off, and I sat there and thought, what have I done? And I sit there during the entire service, and I was cold and sweating, and Diane was looking over me. She thought I was going to die. And then Mr. Mike Fike says, "All right, well, we're going to wrap up this sermon," and then that's when it really hit. That's when it really went south. My blood turned to ice, and I sat there and I just, I stammered up there after the closing hymn, and I just tried to get through it. And even an old guy that y'all remember, Tom Bannister, he asked me, I was talking to him, he goes, "Was that your first closing prayer?" And I was like, "Well, yeah. How did you know? Was it that obvious?" But what helped save me was my beautiful wife. After we were leaving church that day, I said, "Well, I'm not going to do that again." And she said, "No, I thought you were fine. I thought you were okay." And I was like, "Thank you for that," whatever that is, because I don't think it's the truth, but thank you for that. And that helped me to kind of go forward. We can do anything through God. That's my point. And this is how we turn our failures into strengths. Failures should never define us. Instead, they should become our stepping stones to success. Our failures can teach us a valuable lesson about perseverance and reliance on God, as it says in James, who strengthens us through every trial. God's word encourages us to transform our failures into resilience because we are all different, right? We are all very unique. That thumbprint they say, that's only you. And every different person in here has one. Everyone watching on the webcast has a different thumbprint. Everybody in this world has a different, unique thing about themselves. So can God use you, and does he have a purpose for you? Yes, he does. These trials, these things that are happening to you, these are all according to his design, to what he's working in you, and for all of us, not only individually, but also collectively. To close, Romans 8:28, a very familiar verse. "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." This wonderful opportunity that you have is his purpose. So, brethren, trials and tests are going to happen. Our imperfections and weaknesses will be revealed to us over time. Adversities will happen. You're not going to get around that. But whatever happens, whatever you do, Never let a good crisis go to waste.